Let's talk about the general attack strategy threat agents use to conduct an exploit. Although there are a multitude of ways to carry out an exploit, many threat agents will actually follow the same general attack strategy. Understanding the methodology behind common attacks can help you defend your information assets better. The first step in most attacks is some type of reconnaissance. The attacker needs to probe the target computer system or target network for vulnerabilities. They're also trying to gather information. They want to know about system hardware and network configurations. They want to know about individual users and their susceptibility. They'll use different tools to find different information. An agent conducting a social engineering attack needs to gather information about the users on the system. They might dumpster dive, sifting through garbage to find critical information, such as passwords that may have been written down. Any information about network users, systems, and processes can be useful to an attacker. Another tactic is to call individual users and intimidate them enough to give out important information. An attacker will try to sound like someone who has authority in the organization. They'll threaten employees with discipline to acquire sensitive information. An alternative to the intimidation approach is the sympathetic approach. The attacker will pretend to be a fellow employee at the organization who is in a desperate situation that can only be rectified by certain information. There are variations on these methodologies, of course. For example, it's possible for someone to use aggressive emails, texts, or messages on social media to gain information. If an agent is conducting a technical exploit, then the tools used will be a little bit different. A very common tactic is to use the port scan with the utility. The Nmap utility is a security scanner that hackers use a lot. It scans the system to find out what ports are open. An open port on a system represents a potential hole that can be exploited. A ping sweep is another favorite attack tool. The attacking system sends a ping or an ICMP echo request to a range of IP addresses, say 192.168.1.1 to 192.168.1.254. Any valid IP address configured to respond to ping requests will respond with an ICMP echo reply packet. This tells an attacker which IP addresses are active and available on the network. If the reconnaissance goes well and the attacker has a lot of information to work with, the next step is breaching the system. The way the breach is conducted depends on the type of exploit involved. If it's a social engineering exploit, they're going to use the data gathered from the user, such as their username and password. Alternatively, they could get a user to do something for them. If the exploit is a technical exploit, then different processes will be used. The attacker might try to cause an exception error with a buffer overflow that gives them access to the system. They might identify an open port on a network server and try to exploit it. They might try to use password cracking software to crack a password. Once the system has been breached, the next step is to escalate privileges. Most breaches provide the attacker with a limited amount of access to the system since most user accounts don't have high-level privileges. Even if they use a technical exploit, an attacker will probably only have a low level of access. That's not good enough. They want escalated privileges to the system that they're attacking. There are a variety of ways to do this, but many involve exploiting weaknesses in the system's design. In addition to escalating privileges, attackers will also want to create an easy way to access the system a second time. This is called a backdoor. It makes it so they won't have to go through the reconnaissance and breaching process the next time they want to get in. There are all kinds of ways to set up a backdoor. For example, an attacker could set up their own user account. They might even create a user account that looks the same as a user account that already exists. Through social engineering, they may have identified the username of a particular person in the organization. And with some operating systems, you can create a username and then put a space at the end of it. The operating system will recognize it as a completely different user account, but most administrators will see it as identical to the legitimate user account. The next phase in the attack is the stage. This step is optional. If the exploit was designed to steal information like credit card numbers, then an attacker isn't going to be concerned with spreading the attack to other systems. If, however, the attack is an internet worm that's going to be spread all over the world, then the attacker wants to use the system that they've breached to spread the attack. In other words, the breached system becomes a staging ground for mounting attacks on additional systems. The last step is to actually exploit. The attacker tries to gain whatever they initially attacked the system for. It could be customer information, ID numbers, credit card numbers, or embarrassing personal information. The goal of the exploit may not even be to steal. It might seek to create so much traffic on a particular system that the system can't function normally and provide services. In this way, the attack is actually denying services rather than stealing anything. An exploit could also seek to corrupt or modify information. Of course, the actual exploit conducted depends on the motivation of the threat agent. An attacker could be trying to steal information for financial gain or trying to get back at an organization for a perceived wrong. They might be a cyber terrorist trying to bring down a critical infrastructure system. Understanding general attack strategies will help you, as a security administrator, to better identify when attacks are occurring and defend your system against them. It can also help you identify weak spots in your system so you can prevent attacks altogether. To quickly review, the steps in a general attack strategy are reconnaissance, breaching, escalating privileges, staging, and exploiting.